Hello, everybody. How we doing today? Uh-oh. Music's still playing. Ah, yes it is. Yes it is. Why is my desktop audio going off? Huh? That was weird. I shouldn't have any desktop audio right now. Just background audio. There we go. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the Gnome-splaining. Thank you all for the tremendous amount of gifted subs, and I hope you all enjoy this little bit of storytelling time for all of you. Before we jump into the action, as per usual, I have a few little shoutouts I always have to give. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel and you're interested to learn more about this living universe that we currently have 7 games experiencing and living inside of right now, please consider following us on the Twitch channel, maybe subscribing over there. And if you're interested in potentially finding a seat at one of these games, join our Patreon. You can join at one of the lower tiers, which will add you to the waiting list until we can have more games available that might be ran by me or by other dungeon masters out there that we are going to be recruiting. Yeah, should be a fun time, everybody. I'm a little bit excited for that, right? Are y'all excited? No, I'm not getting any puppets, guys. I'm not getting any puppets. Not happening. No. So, how we doing today? Yes, we do use Roll20 candy. Thank you for asking. How much to donate a puppet? I'm not interested in digging the puppets out of my closet right now, so no. Anyways, guys, this is technically my day off. Let's relax, okay? Let's relax a little. Let's enjoy ourselves. I know whoever's watching this in the future might be a little fucking confused because I'm talking to Twitch chat. I don't show Twitch chat on my overlays anymore because the conversations don't get muted. Hocus, I relax sometimes. But yeah. So, just so you all are aware, there is going to be a little bit of build-up to this. You see, I can't just give you the story of what happened. I have to tell you the beginning, the origin of all of this. And spoiler alert for any of you who are in any of the games that are interested in finding out a lot more information like this. If you are listening to this, just know that it might drop some information that might be spoilery to you and the game that you are currently experiencing. So, watch at your own risk. Wyatt, I know you're probably going to be clipping shit here tonight, and if you do that, all I ask is when you put it into the Discord server, is that you, if you put it in the Discord server, is to put it up with, what do you call it? Spoiler warnings. That's it. Just please do that. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Do you have any tips for beginner DMs before you start? Ooh, tips for beginner DMs. Start doing it. Know it's your game. Focus on everybody having fun at the table, including yourself, and don't be afraid to remove people that are toxic. Aside from that, the biggest recommendation I give any dungeon master out there is read the fucking book. Cover to cover. Don't skim. Don't just look at the features as you play along. Read the book, because 90% of the issues you run into are resolved from reading the book. And don't be afraid to change the rules. If you think something's more fun, do it. It's that easy. DM's guide. Player's manual, I mean, is kind of important, but that stuff you can kind of pick up by, interaction with everybody. Read the DM's guide. But anyways, everybody, I've given you all your spoiler warning, right? Spoiler. Warning. Warning. All right? So, a few things that I should let you all know is what specific abbreviations I'm going to be using mean. BM is a time error that is referred to as before mortality. NE is a time error referred to as new embrace. There is no time outside of these two specific errors. My phrasing will be very deliberate during this entire interaction. A little things you need to know about the universe before I tell you too terribly much is, well, it's only about, what would that be, 7,000 years old, but it does predate the aspect of time itself. The universe was created before time was a relevant aspect of anything. And I know that's a little wonky to consider, but trust me, it works out during all of this. Now, the origin of BM is 5,000. 5,000 BM is the earliest along the timeline. And I just lost my place trying to talk to all of y'all. Shit. Okay, there we go. The first form of creatures that were ever produced in Solemn were orcs. Their relationship to many of the beautiful beings inspired by Aseso, the being of creation herself. She existed in the astral before she created New Embrace. And there were beings out there that resembled the orcs, and she thought of them as so beautiful that she wished to make them in their image. The creatures that she produced in their image. Now, after the orcs, she realized that there should be some more creatures. Not everything should look too terribly similar. And in fact, any creature that is born with a specific aspect in its heart should be born a specific way. And if it ever changes its mind, should be able to change at its leisure. The next two creations were gnomes and goblins, each of which were different aspects of creatures that she had interacted with through the astral before. Yes, Wyatt, please make sure everybody dies of alcohol poisoning. No, don't follow that rule that he proposed, everybody. Don't. It'll get bad. But yes, those were the first three creatures. The first world that she ever created was called Solemn. It is the center of her universe that she named because she held it so closely, and her favorite pastime was embracing the world itself. Now, Solemn was interesting because it was an experimental thing that she had to go over. You know, it's kind of odd. She didn't really know what she was doing from the get-go. I mean, what type of being of creation would know everything they're doing? And instead of hard resetting, throwing things in the garbage, and, starting over from scratch, she gave a unique aspect to these three creatures, which is called free will. See, she could produce oceans, she could produce land masses, gravity, stars, anything. She could create anything. But she wanted the creatures that she created to be able to choose whatever they wanted to do, to choose any aspect of their life. And therefore, she created free will. Now, the three creatures each had their own unique senses and their own unique goals. The orcs were always curious. They always wanted to travel around and find out as much as they could about the world around them. They wanted to explore masses that Aseso just kind of crafted because she thought it seemed cool. And when they first approached to the oceans, she gave them a wondrous, wondrous opportunity. She gifted the orcs an adaptation to the water. Those were the first Tritons. She also gave that to the goblins, which turned into Grung, or Furtfur. Furfurt. The gnomes back then did not take a close look at the waters. They saw those, they comprehended them, and they knew everything that was happening. What they wanted to do instead was to mingle with Aseso among the stars, to visit the astral. Now, Aseso told them that she is not able to allow them to simply travel along the astral. Since that is not of her own creation, she could not guarantee any of them would survive. It's too dangerous. There are beings along that area that are of natures that would leave them at risk. And Aseso didn't want any of her creations to suffer, to hurt, or to die. In fact, during this era, death didn't exist. Everything was immortal. So, some of the gnomes were very upset at this. This is the portion of the world where I had my first game running inside of New Embrace, or, at that time, just Solemn. There was one gnome in particular, by the name of Viren. Viren Lorde. They were strongly taken to their free will, and they believed that because of this aspect, they could achieve anything, including the power of creation that Aseso has. Viren began researching the stars of their own accord, finding ways to amplify their vision, to start reading them, searching them, understanding. He was one of the lead designers of astrology. He researched the stars and aspired towards them. Now, all of this was fine. Aseso gave them free will for a reason. She did not want to control what they did. She would answer any questions and interact with them freely, tell them what was happening if they just asked. And every time Viren would ask her, she would get a little more upset. Viren thought himself to be incapable of fault. All he wanted was knowledge and the ability to create like she does. While he was reading the astral, he discovered something out there. He discovered an entity that upon looking at it, Viren went insane for 20 years. When he came back to consciousness, he had a new presence inside of his head. This presence referred to itself simply as Exium. Now, Exium coaxed Viren, prodding at all of his insecurities, at all of his aspirations, wanting to manipulate him. Viren was intoxicated with the idea of aspiring towards the stars. And in fact, when he went to Aseso, he asked now for a different favor: to be able to fly. Of course, when she asked why, Viren was incapable of lying to the goddess of creation. I mean, she is the goddess of creation. And he told her, because I will fly up there myself, I will find a way, and I will obtain everything I want. Can you give me flight? She said no. The first time a Seiso ever denied one of her creations something they wanted. For their own good, or at least from her perspective, their own good. Exium prodded into Viren's mind much, much more deeply and told him, if you can amass enough people to listen to me, to follow a few simple steps, I can grant you all the ability to fly. Viren, being a very charismatic gnome, he ended up going to every known gnome, village, town, wanderer, outlander that he could find, and convinced every single one of them to begin worshiping Exium. So, this was the creation of Kenku. Kenku are related to gnomes. Now, when they first were created, they were capable of flying. They were wondrous at it. They were so energetic, they just soared into the sky, breaking through the atmosphere and going amongst the astral. Well, it was a little unfortunate for many of them that they did this in the one area a Seiso was not watching. And many horrific creatures that lived amongst the stars devoured and decimated the king. When they flew back down to Solemn, they all turned to Viren with anger, thinking, and some of them knowing, that he lied to them, that Seiso did not want them to go up there because it was too dangerous. However, he, being so powerful and so devoted to his ideals, he convinced a large number of them that what happened out there was Seiso. She did this to you. She controlled those creatures. She created them, as she's created everything else, of course. And, well, those of you that died are being punished by her. And those of us that wish to stand fast against her remained in their Kinku form. There were groups that could see through the bullshit, could see that none of that made sense. And when they went back to Seiso, they tried to repent, but she didn't want repentance. She just wanted her creation, her children, to be happy. So she told them all, don't soar too high, and I will give you a different aspect. She created something a lunar aspect, a second moon to be related to Solemn. This moon removed the ability of flight from any Kinku, weighing them down to stop them from making that mistake, which murdered many of them, and to stop them from trying to go elsewhere. There was nothing else out there at the time. There was no other creation for them to enjoy. She needed time to create more for all of them to enjoy. And those that were Aaron Kakra were the ones that repented, and she could trust, because she's not going to seek after you when you've made a mistake. She wants you to make mistakes so that you can learn from them. The Aaron Kakra proved that they could, and they were the first of that race as well. So, during this time, Aseso created pseudo-planes. Planes that only wielded aspects of Solemn. And many of the creatures from these aspects ended up traveling, becoming different in their own right. The orcs went into the wilds, the aspect of wilderness and endless savagery. And many of them decided to turn into elves. Some of them decided to redefine the specific aspect of wilderness that they wish to aspire to, which creates the very diverse array of elves across the entire spectrum. Some gnomes still existed. Viren, in fact, turned his form into a gnome. He wanted to remember where he came from. Though, with the power he wielded, he could simply turn into something else if he so desired. And desire he continued to do. Now, a couple of 100 years pass, and Exium was losing their grip on Solemn. Aseso was still none the wiser that Exium had any attachment to this plane. So, Viren stayed in contact with them, and he heard something from Exium that caused even he to return to Aseso. Exium told Viren that he found out where Solemn was, and he's on his way. See, Viren was self-centered, self-absorbed, very aspiring, to say the least. But he understood a creature that would allow a mass suicide like that was not something that would allow him to progress further. So, he traveled, he found Aseso, and he told her everything. That he was the one who talked to the gnomes, that he was in charge of Exium's cult in Solemn. And he tried repenting. This was the first time Aseso experienced betrayal of that level. Previously, she never saw anything they did was betrayal, just a learning experience. But he hid this from her for hundreds of years. So, she ended up having to create aspects of herself. Because of laws that she instilled to safeguard Embrace, she could not fight Exium. She was incapable of it. She set it up so that beings of aspects of creation can only create, they cannot destroy. So she had to create a solution. Help. This was the origin of the prime deities of Solemn. Aluvergine, Fendrick, Janus. She created all of them. And in order to make sure that she continued to do what was necessary and right, she removed Janus from her inner circle and appointed him the position of outside influence. He's the third party, objective third party. He doesn't care. Everything that happens for a reason, and that is why he was created. Viren begged Aluvergine, begged as hard as he could, to forgive him and to show him a way that he could make this right. A way that he can help. Now, this being Aluvergine's first time ever experiencing betrayal, she trusted him full-heartedly. And after creating all of these new deities and counseling with them, they all decided to create what was called champions. Keep in mind, this was a player character back then. Viren was the first champion, the one instilled with the power of all of the gods, small fragments from each of them, but a person who would be as intelligent as Janus, as willful as Aluvergine, and as quick, cunning, and dangerous as Fendrick. He also accepted a gift from Irene, the ability to love everything. Irene was crafted as a companion for Aseso in order to continue to create if Aseso ended up dying. So, Viren, filled with all of this magic, all of this power, being the avatar of not just one, all of the deities, he realized he was far, far more powerful than he ever imagined. And that amount of power and the hundreds of years that Exium stayed inside his mind drove him mad. He should never bow to a deity. He should not fear an entity that can't even find its way to the only universe. He was better than all of them, and he was going to prove it too. See, the problem with him gaining the knowledge of gods is that he knew specific rituals, aspects of creation that should not exist. One ritual in particular was called the Ritual of the Singularity, where you could destroy aspects of life in order to create an incredible amount of magic and power that, if you instilled into yourself, could amplify an individual, multiplicative. The problem with this ritual, and why it was never used, is because in order to do this, you had to make Aseso cry. Now, some people might think that's kind of easy. There's very few things Aseso will actually weep about. One of them is genocide. So, Viren and two other gnome players decided they were going to seek after specific groups in the world that had wronged and betrayed them previously and eliminate them in order to create singularity. Now, the closer to the origin of a creature, the closer to the origin of creation, the more powerful the singularity. So, while the other gnomes were seeking after Kinku, Aaron-Kakra, Tabaxi, humans, Viren was one of the only ones who remembered orcs, goblins, and gnomes. So, they managed to all but eradicate the tabaxis from existence. Almost eradicate humans from existence. And it was at this time that Aceso was breaking down. And she wept. A single tear of a Celestial. Byron quickly snatched that up, and he crafted the first ever singularity. It is the Tome of Written Law. Now, a mortal creature that writes in the Tome of Written Law will perish from existence, and their essence will imbue that law as a law of nature. An immortal being that writes it can only do so once. And Byron looked up towards the heavens and wrote the law that no gnomes were ever created. Now, me, being an inexperienced GM back then, took that very seriously. One thing he hid from everybody else was that he changed his aspect away from gnomage. When he infused himself with Exium, he became the first of the Aasimar. So, every lineage of gnomish kind all went extinct at the same time. Except him. And he took that opportunity to gather up every single tear Aceso was capable of weeping, as he just single-handedly removed 1/3 of the entire population of her entire existence of working. No. Byron created many more singularities with all of these tears. Maddened with the power he had, Aceso was almost incapable of doing anything. So stricken with grief, she dejected herself from everything. The other deities she created in her wake decided that what Byron was doing was more than likely more destructive than what would happen if Exium arrived. And each of them tried to remove their gifts of magic from him. But because of the way he constructed the singularities, he went to a place where no magic could vary. There was no discrepancy between power. Everything there possessed the same amount of power and influence. He crafted this place himself. A place that would naturally sync itself to the rest of existence and gather all of the information as a singularity and bring it to him. Frustrated, the deities were beyond any comprehension of reason, and so they crafted their own new champions. These champions were different. Each deity had one, and each deity gave them one tier to build a weapon to empower themselves with. And this was the first creation of weapons. Nobody needed it back then. There was no need to fight. And over the next 200 years, a battle waged between champions and Byron until they managed to knock him unconscious. However, he found a way to make himself beyond immortal. Something that only an entity of destruction would be able to destroy. And the only one that they knew like that was Exium. So, they did the only thing they could do. Put him into a perpetual state of sleep. And keep these champions in case Byron ever woke up again. So, everybody, if you were wondering why I hate gnomes so much, there was 3 of them in particular. Byron by far was the worst, but does make a hell of an antagonist for my overarching story, I think. So, thank you all for coming here and listening to our little talk. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. I hope you got enough information out of all of this. Remember to give us a like, a follow, a subscription. Be sure to check up to date with everything happening on the Twitch channel if you're watching this on YouTube. And we will see you around next time. Take care.